have circumstances where the establishment closed and they send in other individuals that meet the licensing criteria and open right back up. We did have the opportunity to have added in the 2018 legislation that is, if a location by address is identified as an illicit massage business or a human trafficking business, then a business cannot reopen in that same facility. So that's hopefully where we're headed in this matter.
May I speak, Mr. Chairman, or somebody else? I think my biggest issue of that whole deal is that the person still has a license, number one, even though we can't find them. They should have been suspended by now through time. Even if you had your hearing, your 120 days, it's been, 750 days approximately now. Still hasn't had anything happen with that, and the establishment is still conducting business there. If there was a complaint, it says very, very clearly in the code and also in this book that is y'all's purpose is to keep public safety number one, so you do have the opportunity to suspend or revoke in doing that. I know we talked about, y'all didn't know anything about the resignation of Lieutenant Beams, and I get 1,000 emails too, but both of you are copied on 4 emails that I've gotten from him on July 13th, 9:42, 9:43, 2:13, and 3:12 with the rest of the people that are on your staff, the investigators. So I'm gonna give you benefit of the doubt saying I get a lot of emails and don't see them a lot of times too, because that was all right there together in one day, but you definitely had emails stating that there was issues 2 months prior to him putting in his resignation.
And we did respond to him and provide him all those application informations, background check information, as well as TLO reports. So.
Co-chair?
How many, I notice you have currently, or in this report, 3,179, and then you've mentioned that you have done suspensions and revocations and surrenders. How many a year have you suspended or revoked?
Very few, because we're very successful in the consent agreements, especially when they surrender their license.
All right, how many surrenders have you had?
We have probably had 10, at least 10 surrender of licenses this year. And all of those are reported in the actions, of course, on our disciplinary report on the website. So we are successful. We would rather the license be surrendered than to go through the hearing process. So we do try to encourage them to go ahead and surrender their license, which negates any other, not negates, but if they come back and operate, of course, that would go, they wouldn't be issued a license.
And what are the main reasons, or what is the largest percentage of the reasons you've had the surrenders or the revocations?
Boundary issues, sexual crimes on their background checks, if they are caught operating, having other therapists operate in the facility that are not licensed, but they're responsible for, those type of issues.
And then, we've talked about, y'all said IMBs, so internet massage businesses.
Illicit,
I'm sorry. I was trying to get that definition down. And then in the talks, that seems to be the worst crime committing group in this field. Yet I've almost gotten a feeling that y'all thrown up your hands on that. So correct my impression, please.
Yes, ma'am. So when we stopped doing our own undercover operations years ago, and we were advised to do that. So we will work with the local police department, sheriff's department, or whatever to go in and do various stings. And sometimes there are actually clients caught with the therapist in doing those acts, and we're successful in getting turning those over to the law enforcement agents to prosecute for those things that they have committed there, and then we will go and suspend or not reissue that establishment license. So it's kind of dual-fold. We do a lot of work with local law enforcement. They do a lot of sting operations with the local law enforcement and such. And so, and all of my investigators, all 3 of them, are highly involved in that case in Coleman, especially with the sergeant there. So,
Hold on. Can I interrupt here?
Yeah, take over.
All 3 of your investigators are highly involved in what happened in Coleman? But you can't find a witness that would be willing to testify at your hearing? Where are your investigators?
I think we just went through that a few minutes ago.
No, before it was the DA's office and the Attorney General's office was the problem because the Attorney General's office didn't want to pursue, so you couldn't prosecute because the
They
Attorney
didn't
General's office
investigate.
didn't want to, the Attorney General's office didn't want to share the file with other members of the Attorney General's office, so they didn't know who the witnesses are. So then you blamed it on the Shelby County prosecutors or whoever the county prosecutors were and said, well, they didn't want my officers to testify. Well, now you're saying your investigators were heavily involved with what happened there, and you still can't find a witness that would be able to hold up in court to make sure that that person doesn't get renew their license?
Heavily involved in communication with the officers, not in whatever was conducted there in the city of Coleman. No.
I think I understood that this thing happened an hour and a half or so before.
Prior to our investigators showing up. So, yes.
All right, members, any other questions, comments, concerns? We've got some folks here that have signed up to speak, and we'll get to that, but we'll certainly, go ahead. Well, let's take all the questions now, and then we'll have some public comment.
Okay, mine is a optics of financials on. I'd requested because I wasn't here last year when all that was done. So we just were seeing the effects of the prior significant issues, that sort of thing. So I'd asked for the financials for the last 4 or 5 years, and so there was a steady decline in ending balances, of cash reserves. In fact, in 2021, it got down to $432. And then in 21-22, so I'm asking you this, just clear up optics for futures. In 21-22, the Professional Occupational Board penalties went from typical $5,000, $8,000 a year to $94,350, and coming off that low one, I think it'd be good if you could just say, well, here's what that was, instead of some people making assumptions of it being such a large amount, all in 1 year. And you might not have that data with you today, but
I'll provide it to you, but I can
Yeah.
answer some of that.
okay, that's cool.
There were not a lot of fines or consents entered during the COVID period. And then we also we're looking more closely at the type of complaints coming in and the type of violations that we were seeing. And so then we came up with a criteria, especially for inspections,
New criteria.
a new criteria, and set fines for any violation on the inspection report.
Okay.
So we revised all of that. So there are reasons why those fines increased.
Okay, this started back in 2017, so yeah, I was just asking clear up optics on that.
Yes, sir.
Members, any more questions, comments, concerns right now before we get to the public comment section? Okay. Today we have signed up to speak two folks from the public. Christy Williams. Ms. Williams, are you here? Okay. We've got a request from a board member to take Ms. Patricia McKay first. I'm sorry, Ms. Williams, if you don't mind holding, just give us just a minute. We're going to hear from Ms. McKay. Ms. McKay, thank you for joining us today. I'm grateful. I know the committee is anxious to hear your comments, and unfortunately, we're going to limit it, and we're going to limit it to 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll hopefully be okay with that. Good afternoon. My name is Patricia McKay, and I am the chair of the Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force, as well as the chair of the North Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force. For the past 14 years, I have worked diligently across the state to raise awareness, provide training, and facilitate collaboration with various Alabama groups regarding human trafficking in hopes of ending these horrible crimes. I'm always open to conversation and assistance with any board of massage therapy member, or any other board for that matter, to discuss aspects of human trafficking, arrange and discuss available training options, and provide input, guidance, or information on the issue of human trafficking. However, in the 9 years since the Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force has been in existence, and in the over 11 and a half years the North Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force has been in existence, I have not received a single phone call, email, or text from the executive director of this board or anyone else from this board. Illicit massage establishments have been on our state's radar, as well as mine, for several years. The Board of Massage Therapy should be the key to keeping massage customers safe and without incidents by following the laws and regulations intended for issuing licenses to those who are qualified, investigating and reporting any and all illegal situations to law enforcement, and staying abreast of human trafficking laws, trends, and practices as they relate to massage establishments. However, this has not been the case under this board. I have learned in recent months that illicit activity has occurred on more than one occasion in massage establishments across Alabama. It is my understanding, too, that under this administration, these activities are, quote, investigated, but are not being reported to local, state, or federal law enforcement. It is also my understanding that when these incidents are not reported to law enforcement, no case can be brought against the perpetrators to find justice and rectification for the victims. I have learned in recent months also that Mr. Warren has stated that the Board of Massage Therapy Investigators are, quote, participating in the Human Trafficking Task Force for the Southern region. Now, this is concerning to me because there's not a group that's named that. The correct name of the task force that I think he's referring to is the Southern District U.S. Attorney's Task Force Against Human Trafficking. Two, the task force with even a similar name would be that one. And it's interesting to me that he's not even referring it to the actual name. That particular task force is in Mobile. Why wouldn't he attend the Alabama human trafficking, or the investigators attend in Montgomery where the Alabama task force meets? In reviewing the Massage Therapy Board's website, although there are 3 references to human trafficking related information provided on the website, it is sketchy at best and potentially misleading or out of date. The information gives the impression of board participation with no evidence to validate those claims. The first reference is a link to the Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force.
Ms. McKay, I hate to
Is
cut you
that-
off, and we've gone over a little bit. Certainly,
Okay.
the board members the committee members will be able to ask you questions if
Okay.
they desire to.
Sorry.
And members, do y'all want to ask any questions of her? Okay, all right. Thank you for
Thank you.
being here. Thank you. Next up, we've got Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams, if you'll come up and you'll have 3 minutes and yes, sir.
I wonder, it looks like you have a prepared statement there that the lady was reading. Could we get a copy of that?
If she desires that, we'll certainly distribute that, get copies made, and send it to the members. Ms. McKay. Ms. Williams, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I have a quick request before I start my time, if you don't mind, and it's to do with the Administrative Procedures Act. I would like to just, for 2 seconds, just jump on that for just a minute before we start it. I'm not an attorney. I rub backs. But I will tell you that the Administrative Procedures Act in this state is very clear of how licenses can be addressed. It's being done in other states and not here. So just please look into that. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm ready.
Go right ahead.
So I've learned the hard way through this that in order to make change, you got to be tough. So just please look into that. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm ready.
Go right ahead.
So I've learned the hard way through this that in order to make change, you got to be tough. Luckily, I'm from Winston County, Alabama. It has been a privilege to play a small part in the 4 executive orders signed by the governor, and to stand here under the new attitude of sunset is an honor. I'd like to leave you with a few statements to consider as you deliberate our board in your action meeting later this afternoon. This will determine the future for my ability to earn a living in this state. First, please remember that these behaviors by Mr. Warren are not in any way new. 3 decades of intentional violations takes planning and calculation. The great philosopher Plato once said that good people do not need laws to tell them how to act responsibly, while bad people will find any way around the law. So I ask you, what type of person uses the excuse, "No one told me to stop," for law violations? Next, these board members were made aware of the severe conditions of our agency. Y'all know I like to send emails. They got some emails. They were very well aware of this, and I personally notified each member, and I was reprimanded in a board meeting on August the 5th because a particular board meeting, a board member's system was overloaded. I was ignored, ridiculed, defamed, and blamed for these issues. These board members, they are educated, they own schools, and they're business owners. These are grown adults. This is not all Mr. Warren's fault. If you're going to serve on a board, you look at your stuff and you get it right. The end. Right? Well, we all make mistakes. There is education allowed for these boards through LSA, free education. We all know that. Anthony Latham told me that himself. Why aren't we pursuing it? You don't have to wait on your executive director. You're his boss. At the end of the day, I'm going to close with this. They fought back so hard in this last legislative session that Senator Gudger was forced to draft a backup bill because they advocated to sunset their own agency. Ignorance does not justify incompetence when you're over my livelihood. That bill from Senator Gudger, I beg this committee to look at SB 350 as the modification for this board so that we can rectify 30 years of issues. And there are applications waiting in the governor's office to reappoint. They expire on the 30th. Mason has them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. We appreciate that. Committee members, any questions, comments, concerns?